Okay, ladies, I'm really excited today because I'm here with one of my dear private clients, Erin, and we are going to chat about her experience in my one-on-one program, and she's going to share her valuable insights and her journey with us. And we are going to chat about femininity, about relationships, inner work, and so much more. Erin, I'm so excited you agreed to share a little bit about your journey today and the work we've done together. So, welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm so excited too. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'm going to dive right in and I'm going to ask you the first question. Why did you decide to sign up for the one-on-one support and seek support and join my program? Where do you feel like you were in your life then? What was happening? What was going on?
Well, at the time, I had broken up with, or I had just ended a relationship or had a relationship end with someone, and felt really lost.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily not just because the relationship ended, but because I had experienced the same sort of pattern or something I had had before in my life, with a relationship with a man, and had seen it happen a couple of times. And it wasn't for lack of trying to improve or get better, because I had done years of spiritual seeking, reading books, spending money on programs, spending money on um, anything from, actual counseling, and not just around relationships, but just sort of like self improvement to, manifesting stuff. Or I had tried every avenue. I had really thought that I had put in the work to kind of, break relationship cycles, and I just kept experiencing it. So I kind of came across sort of serendipitously in, I think it was either social media or Pinterest or something. I read something of yours that sort of described me to a T, which was, very successful in my career and life otherwise, and great friendships, and, you know, other things that were really working well. But, for me, the relationship aspect and this pushing, trying, overworking, mothering, all of these things just resonated so deeply. And I thought about it and thought about it. And then you and I had talked to have like just a session to see if it would be a good fit. And I just knew it was something I needed to try that would be different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You just described majority of my clients. Usually a lot of my clients are seekers because they are so empathetic. They are very motivated to grow and to be a better person or a better partner. And kind of you described that exact journey. It starts with a little bit of self-improvement or self-development. Then we probably dip into spirituality because we are seeking, like there is something that we are seeking. Our heart knows that we are seeking, and I often said that we don't know what we don't know. Sometimes we truly don't know what it is that we are seeking. And usually women who are coming to me and are ready to do the work that we've done together are just seeking connection with their feminine heart and with their essence. And they are seeking to feel loved and worthy, no matter what happens in their life or no matter what's going on in relationships. And then also I feel like we have our we all have as women, and especially clients who are coming to me, they have a desire for a relationship, and there is a part of them that doesn't want to give up on the desire and what they feel they can have.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit more about the pattern that was coming up for you? How did you feel in relationships before, and how did you show up, let's say, with men?
Sure. So, what I would notice happening, especially after the fact, but even during the relationships, typically, in the initially, and as I would go through these sort of findings prior to finding you, the spiritual seeking and all of these, and learning about myself, some things did improve to where I would just not have a great start in relationship, to the point where in the last one I had was, it started great, actually strong. And I felt good when I was, I would be pursued initially. And what always ended up happening was, slowly but surely, my ability to kind of um, decide if I wanted to be in the relationship, decide if I, is this working for me? And do I really mesh with this person? And that would go away completely. It would start going well. I would find that I would like this person even a little bit, and I would get into this role of performing to make sure he liked me, to make sure that I was meeting all of his needs. And he would know, of course, these men aren't asking me to do this necessarily. It's just the way I sort of, my intuition would kick in, and this is how I would do it. Or I would help when I help them, save them in some way and also be saved. And so it would come to that point also where then it would almost just feel lost on, who am I in this? What do I want in this? And that wouldn't even matter to the degree as much as, can I make this work? I have to make this work. I have to make sure that he's okay, that he knows that I am important enough to keep around. I mean, I could see it kind of unfold. And as it was happening, I still did not, I mean, it was very uncomfortable. And later, after working with you, like, I notice it as now physical discomfort, like being triggered or feeling like just awful all the time. And so I would get into those roles of doing that. And I just didn't know how to do anything else. I just didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know how to, make that stop. And I had to catch myself there, because the old thought pattern would be, how do I make myself better? Or like, how do I make this work or make myself not do this? Instead of just realizing there's nothing I have to do to be better. I mean, so it was just a different way of being, and a pattern that I would see over and over again.
And you said something interesting there. You said that it felt like your intuition was pulling you to certain pattern or direction. And this is exactly what happens when we don't understand stress responses, or what I'm often talking about is pain of heartbreak, unhealed pain from heartbreak, because that stress response or heartbreak, what it does, it clouds our intuition completely. So it's going to feel like my intuition was pulling me this way, when in fact it was trauma, it was a stress response, it was a learned pattern of showing up in very unhealthy way in a relationship that was pulling us that way. And then what this does is that we completely lose trust in ourselves, because it feels like, but my intuition told me to do this, when in fact it was not intuition, it was what we are talking about as a little girl in us, that little child who needs parenting. So yeah, it's interesting that you bring it up. So how did you feel about yourself with all these patterns that you had, and all these unprocessed emotions that you were carrying? How did you feel about yourself as a woman? And what do you feel like you've been taught about being a woman and being feminine in a relationship?
Well, I really didn't think about that before. I mean, I didn't think of what that meant for me, what it seemed, or what I was modeled, my role or belief was. It wasn't really not in the way you teach, and not in the way I feel now, but it was not safe to be feminine, and to um trust in any kind of way. And those weren't things that I was familiar with feeling. And I certainly was terrified of feeling them once initially, as we started with like looking at that. And even now, of course, still, like, I still have to sort of feel my way through it. But it just, being feminine in a relationship set you up for disappointment, is sort of how I felt. If I let my guard down, or if I lose control. And when I say that, just, I'm not the kind of control that where I feel like I'm dominating. Like I actually feel just for any other woman who would experience something different. So I don't mean a woman where you would look at a relationship and say, oh, like she's definitely the one, quote unquote, wearing the pants. I'm definitely not like that. My control was almost way more subtle and manipulative, which sounds so ugly to say. I think the word sounds ugly, but it certainly was. Like it was a way to be a certain way and to do all of the, right things, what I thought would be right, in a way that would get me what I thought I wanted, or what I wanted, which was love, which was going about a way that, of course, love is the desire there, but like, in a way that I would have to do these things in order to get that love. And so I think it's being feminine, and that wasn't something that I thought about. It wasn't okay for me to relax and to pay attention to my own needs and to have discernment and to do anything like that.
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
add one thing here because again, you brought up an interesting topic, and it's the topic of reactivity or control. We often think that control is external. It's like if I'm not controlling the man, or I am not acting up or making a scene, I am not being controlling, or I am not creating drama in a relationship. But what you've described, and this is often a case for a lot of empathetic women, we tend to internalize that control and uncertainty that we are experiencing in a relationship, and it turns inwards as the need to fix ourselves. So even though it seems like we are not acting up in an obvious way in a relationship, what we do is that we we are suffering in silence because that control turned inwards, and we are trying to improve ourselves. We feel like nothing we do will be ever enough to have the love we desire, or to have the healthy relationship we desire. And it shows up often as obsessing over men, or even when we are in a relationship, we put our needs last, and we are always, that first thought is like, how do I please the man, or what does he need from me? How can I be the perfect woman, or the woman that he's going to fall in love with? Which, as you said, is performing in relationships. And that's when we start distancing ourselves and disconnecting ourselves from our heart. And it's a very painful place to be. And as you mentioned, it is a journey. We kind of need to find our way back to our heart and to our feminine body. And would you mind talking a little bit about what does femininity mean to you now, as we've done the work together? How do you feel about yourself as a woman now? What do you think about being feminine? Anything that comes to your mind that you would like to share?
Sure. I mean, it's really, like, I'm smiling now because it's something that I'm so grateful that I can even feel within myself. I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
now I think being able to just, like you're saying, turn inward and ask myself how I'm feeling and what I need, and to sort of just do things that make me feel energized and full. And I think that that's probably, I'm sure, different for everyone. In the sanctuary, you give great information about this and how to sort of discover this for each person. But I think, once, learning how to feel the difference between completely physically nervous system taxed, all I'm doing is thinking, how is everyone else doing, how is this man doing, how, that what was normal for me. I mean, it was normal to feel exhausted and not have enough energy to do things that made me feel recharged and refilled. And you know, now I know when I start to feel like that, it's gone too far. It's time to, okay, bring it down. What do I need to do for myself today? Maybe it's Maybe it's just I get to feel into watching something I love, or taking a walk, or journaling, or just really connecting with um, nature, or doing something. So I think, paying attention to what makes you feel, or what makes me feel really good. And I think as a woman, that's your power, is to find a spot where you are able to every day, or as often as possible. I mean, even at work, and I work in a very high stress situation job, like,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to stop and say, okay, I can feel this is I am getting really overtaxed here. I don't feel like myself because I don't feel good. So if I don't feel good, that's not me. I think we're supposed to feel mostly good. I think we're
Of
supposed to,
course, yes. Mm-hmm.
right? Like, we're supposed to feel so good. So if I'm not feeling good, what can I do? Oh, can I take a 5-minute break? And no, I can't answer your questions, or I can't do this right now. I need 5 minutes. And having loving, caring boundaries to be able to do that and restore, take a few breaths and just recenter, and really do that for myself and love myself enough to do that. And that gives me the ability, the power, empowerment to be able to then do all the other things I need to for everyone else. And I think that for me feels like femininity, and to receive when people give to me. So that was another thing I
Mm-hmm.
could
Mm-hmm.
not do. And I mean, uncomfortable. And I'm still working on it, but at work or in any situation, friends, family, whatever. If somebody gives me a compliment, not needing to repay them with and I think women do this, like immediately give someone a compliment in return because they're uncomfortable with receiving anything. But, just saying thank you, and like really feeling that, and noticing and kind of playing around with it with men in particular when they want to do something for me, even with seemingly the smallest thing.
Yes.
Something is given to me, like, hey, can I help you with this? Before, no, I don't need your help. And most of the time I don't need the help because I can't do it myself. But to say, oh,
Mm.
actually, yeah, sure, you can help, and thank you. And to notice the response is like, it overjoys them to be able to do that for us. And so, yeah,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
an amazing place to be, because and it's not manipulative, and it's not to gain power over anyone, but it is just to say,
Mm-hmm.
that's that feels like, oh, I don't have to be overworked, exhausted all the time, and then resentful and angry that things aren't going my way. Actually can find a way to do the things I need to do, to take the time I need to restore myself and to receive and to do those things. And actually that's what makes me feminine.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Where do you think the overworking was coming from? Now that you learned more about your heart and about your needs as a woman and about the pent up resentment, as you mentioned, or the need to seek control, where do you think that overworking was coming from for you specifically?
For me specifically, I grew up in a home where my dad drank. My dad was a
Mm,
loving dad, and he physically wasn't harmful or anything, but he was an alcoholic. And my mom was very hardworking, but also had the codependency part in that. And I learned as took on the role. I don't know when, how old, but I as the mediator, I think,
mm-hmm.
to make everyone okay, to keep things balanced. And that meant I had to kind of shelf all of my own needs and desires to make everything else and
Mm-hmm.
everyone outside of me okay. And that's a lot of work. That is a big task for a young child that I took
Yeah,
on.
that's a
And
huge task. That's when
yeah,
we start feeling like the world is crushing us and the walls are falling on us, and it is still that child in us looking around and seeking the parent, seeking someone wise, seeking someone who would give her direction, and she's feeling frustrated with the world. She is like, this is a big injustice for the child to carry so much responsibility that she was never supposed to carry. And the majority of women, again, coming to me, we didn't have space or time to grieve what was lost in that process, and and what we were taught to think and to believe about ourselves. And that is what creates so much tension and frustration in relationships. And that's where we kind of try to squeeze the care and love and attention and safety that we haven't received in our family of origin or community. We try to squeeze it from the man, and then nothing he gives to us is ever enough, because that emptiness and that hole that we feel in our heart, it can only be restored from within by doing the work of connecting with our own heart and connecting with love. And often we are talking in sessions about God and the divine masculine. Uh, how did your relationship change to, we can call it God or life in general, or towards the masculine, towards men? How do you feel like that healing that we've done shifted your relationship even with the masculine or life itself?
I mean, it completely changed it. And I will have to say, like, I actually was surprised when we started talking about that. Like, I, and so much of this is, I think, why for many women it is a process that is so helpful to have somebody outside of yourself, like you, who can bring these things to light. It was very shocking to me to discover I didn't trust God. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I guess and oh, but for sure, I definitely had mistrust there, and am still very much working on it. If you know, when we first started, I was like, no way, like I'm like a loving spiritual person, like I know God and the universe, and I know that they're there and everything. But also my behavior was, however, I am going to definitely try to do every single thing myself, and not trust that life is going to work out for me. And so yes, so now I think it's probably one of my biggest practices, is to be able to say, okay, this is, and truly just having those conversations, prayer, whatever you want to call it, meditation, sort of
Mm-hmm.
interactions with my inner being and God, and just saying, like, I really want your help, and I want to trust you, and I want to learn how to do this, and asking for that. And it feels better now, and I feel really great about asking. At first I didn't, which showed me that I had a block of some sort there, a mistrust. And now just being able to do that, and then I think you're shown. I think if you're willing to do that, like, all you need to do is, I think, have a willingness, and I think you'll be given that, or at least I have. And you'll be shown little sort of things throughout the day, or
Mm-hmm.
just eventually things are being answered, and then deciding to trust men in different small steps for me, right? Like, I'll
Yeah.
trust them here at work or with whatever, and just seeing it be okay. And it's not okay because I'm putting all of my eggs in the basket of, if they fail me, then I'm going to just be horrified. But because I know I can trust myself, I can trust
Mm-hmm.
that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's building the muscle of self-trust, and also trust in men, the masculine life itself. And what the stress response, unhealed stress response, does is that we are thinking in either or terms. It's like, either I'm going to trust men and burn myself, or I am alone in this world, alone by myself, and I don't need a man. I need no man. I can figure it out on my own. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the logic of the 3-year-old that's still looking for the parent. We Once you restore the relationship with your heart, you start trusting yourself. And also, as a mature grown up woman, you now have a discernment. You don't allow any man to come into your life, or you don't allow any man to make you offers or to accept offers that you are not comfortable with. would you mind speaking a little bit about the discernment and what you learned about maybe different types of men or different treatments? Can you talk a little bit more about the discernment you gained in the programs, in the
Sure.
sanctuary, I mean, and then in the one-on-one sessions as well?
Yes. So the sanctuary is so wonderful, and I will say that, like, I even still daily, like, will listen to and re-listen. Always can't wait for the next session you put out. But as far as, the one-on-one, what that is providing, I mean, I the way you sort of kind of took me into looking at the fact that, we do have that inner masculine, and not even really having tapped into that or really looked at it like that before, I guess, like that facet of me, or that part of me that is, now that I'm an adult, that part of me that is able to, I guess sometimes you say your inner husband, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
a
So
protector. Mm-hmm.
right, the protector, the one
Mm-hmm.
that is there for that discernment, or and
Mm-hmm.
that to help, sort of to get things, tasks executed and things like that, to provide that energy and that role, building that muscle or that part. So before, I once, so I would maybe start be in a relationship, and, because I was so focused and so overrun by that, now I know, is that little girl in me who is just trying to prove her worth, or, prove that she is able to provide something herself, to be loved. Like, I'm lovable. So I'm going to kind of completely blind myself to whatever this man, this other half, this relationship is doing. Not seeing that there are, you know, oftentimes where, for me, red flags is kind of a trendy way of saying it, I guess, but, or even just, this isn't a fit. This isn't a bad man or a bad human, but this is not somebody who's on the level that I'm at. And I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have seen that before. And so what I would
Mm-hmm.
experience is somebody who would see my ability to, you know, get things done, or ability to spiritually explain, or have perspective, and they would kind of be tugging on me and needing me to do that for them, pull them along in life. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Can
never.
you actually talk a little bit more specifically? I know there was one example of a man kind of reappearing from your
Oh yeah,
past, and you
yeah,
don't
sure.
have to be specific, but I would just want like you to in general describe how you would show up with them in the past, and then once you've done the work, how did you show up with him then?
Oh sure, okay. So this particular person, um very sort of charismatic man, fun to be around, is still a good, a friend. If he called me, I would talk to him briefly probably, and whatever. But the difference is how I feel about it now. And so before, I didn't see, he liked to stay up late and party. He was always late and picking me up, or making, going out. Even if I said, I have to work, or I have, or and just, I don't want to be out that late, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, I would kind of give my need, and those would be not really tended to. And before, I would just kind of let it slide. Like, this person, I just, doesn't matter. He has all of these other qualities, which is, I think, important to always sort of say too, is like, we don't always get these giant red flags that are obvious, like someone's going to physically abuse us. So a lot of times it is these seemingly subtle but very important to, is this good for my life, behavior. And it just wasn't good for me. It wasn't a good fit for me. And, it wasn't, this showing up late, this not what, all of these things, they were not what I wanted. However, I didn't feel like, what if this is the last one? What if all of these
Yes,
thoughts,
exactly.
like,
I
which,
think all the ladies listening can relate to that one. What if this is the last man on earth that I
right.
am going to love or like or be attracted to? Yes.
which is not, I mean, we all can logically say of course that's not true, but that's what your that feeling is,
Yeah,
this is
that
like that,
feeling of
that
codependency and of
yeah, that
obsession.
feeling
Yeah.
exactly.
It's addiction. So sometimes I talk about the addictive aspect of codependency. It is what we are talking about when we have that feeling, what if this is the last one? It's actually the addictive aspect of codependency that needs to be tended to. Yeah. So how did you show up with him after we've done the work? How did you
Yeah,
feel?
so
Hmm.
he resurfaced again and came back and says all the right things, I mean, very, very caring, loving, smart, all these things. Great person, but asked me to go to dinner, sort of a date. I mean, so I said yes, knowing though, after doing some work, like I don't really want to go in the sense of
You
a
just
date.
wanted to see for yourself.
I kind of just wanted to see. Well,
You wanted to practice.
I did want to practice, and I showed up, and he was late. Um, and 15 minutes later, so, and then listening to him, it was, like, oh, okay. I see all, it was very clear to me. Like I was listening to it, and where before I would have been up in my head
Hmm.
thinking about what am I going to do? What is he thinking about me? How can I make him like me? And then
Hmm.
after having worked on my, with you some, I was as present as possible, listening, sort of
Yeah.
taking in what he was saying, deciding like in that moment, okay, yeah, this is not what I want. This is not good for me. And I didn't, I just knew at that time, like it wasn't what I wanted
Hmm.
anymore. And it was very easy for me to be okay with that. And it seems like a small victory, I guess, but for me, it was just
It's
huge to
huge.
not like be out of my body and into my mind and like racing
Exactly.
to make him happy. And I
Hmm.
able to see everything very clearly, right? You just see the truth. And it
Yes.
was it was easier to just, all right, that's fine. I'm done with that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it is a huge decision because I see so many women wasting years with these types of men. It seems like a small decision in the moment where you are making it, but it can save you years and years of wasted time. And this is why we do somatic work in sessions, and I help you become very aware of how your body feels in certain situations, and we start working with the intuition or the gut knowing that something is off. I'm not feeling safe because, as you said, the trauma or the stress responses we carry, they keep us in our head and in our mind. And because we, in that moment where we didn't have skills to cope with whatever happened, whatever heartbreak we experienced, our mind felt like a safer place. It felt like if I start analyzing myself and doing things perfectly and coming up with solutions how to improve myself, I won't have to experience heartbreak again. And that's why it often feels so painful to return to our body and to process what we haven't processed in a very feminine, loving way, always with a lot of love and compassion and understanding. And then when you sit with a man, you can be fully yourself, and your body actually is going to give you all the cues that you need to assess whether someone is a healthy relationship partner or not. You All those cues are already there when we take time to slow down and to actually listen to what the other person is saying. Oftentimes a lot of communication is subconscious. We feel it as women on an energetic level, on a feeling level. Our body is picking up on so many nonverbal cues, just the way the man's energy feels, how his presence, in other words, presence feels. Am I feeling safe? Is he respectful of my needs? Is he tending to my needs? Does he really listen when I say that I need something? Everything is already there. Oftentimes, when a woman is like, I haven't seen it coming, I always wonder where her awareness was, not as like a way of judging or shaming anyone. It is, I understand that it is coming from a stress response, and that's why we do the somatic work. But I believe that we usually, I had so many clients tell me that as I was walking down the aisle, I knew that he wasn't the right man for me. And it is always there, the knowingness, the wisdom is always there, right there in our body. It is within our reach. But as I said, sometimes it takes someone outside of ourselves to hold our hand and to walk us through the process of starting to trust that part of us, starting to trust the intuition and learning to discern. I always say that the discernment is a skill. If you didn't have a healthy masculine role model in your family or community, how do we think that we can gain that discernment? It is learned, it is practiced. We are receiving all kinds of blueprints, and unfortunately, if we receive the unhealthy blueprint, which I often refer to as disempowered masculine, then that's all we know. And if that's all we know, we sometimes need to humble ourselves and admit that I don't know what is healthy. I don't know how the healthy feels. I don't have the roadmap, and I need help. Okay, so yeah, so that was a huge win for you. And how do you feel? So, last two questions. How do you feel about men right now in general? What do you think were your beliefs before coming to my program, and how do you feel about men now? What did you learn about them?
I think before I I just didn't really trust any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wanted to. I really did, and um, I wanted to believe that this feeling of this desire of wanting partnership that I wished away so many times. Like life would be so much easier if I just didn't really feel this deep
Mm-hmm.
knowing or desire to want to be in a be in a relationship. And I just didn't believe that they were either um, there wasn't going to be somebody who was going to find me to be the right person for them. So a lot of it was oftentimes like there was something wrong with me with them.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you know, they needed to be changed or fixed or helped in some sort of way by me. And now I just I don't think that. I mean, I think every one of them is, I think that everyone's in a different place, as far as not every single man is going to be a good match for different reasons. And not that I thought they all were before, but I actually think about that now versus just wanting to prove myself. But I think that it's very clear now, the ones that are into their sort of empowered masculine. I can see
Mm-hmm.
that now, what that looks like, and
Mm-hmm.
mostly what that feels like, what I feel like in the presence of that.
How do you
You
feel? How do you feel like in the presence of a healthy, emotionally healthy masculine man?
Um, it feels way sometime, I'll be honest with you, it took me a little while to feel comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now it feels like it's this, and I loved a lot of the stuff that we did to to figure out what that felt like.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Mm-hmm.
some of my favorite things that we did, because I really didn't know. Like when you say, to be honest, like you don't know what healthy masculine looks like, I didn't really know. And it's sort of like this strength and this wanting or desire to make my life easier in some way.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And that's not just like a potential partner, but that's friends, uh,
Mm-hmm.
family, coworkers, paying attention to that and just sort of starting to, you use the word practice, but actually truly like practicing out in real life, like real life application, taking when I would learn from you and still what I have learned, and then noticing it, like, okay, what does this person feel like? What does this man feel like? Oh, I really actually feel that presence. I feel that willingness and desire. And what I didn't feel, the lack of what I felt, was pulling at me to do something or to fix them. So while I also had that need and desire to want to do that, like I wanted to do that before, there are men that want you to do that, and you can feel that, and it's draining. It makes you makes me feel completely exhausted, even in that moment. Like you just feel like you're like all of your energy is trying to be used to help them do something. And so trying
Yes.
to right, like I, and then, you know, well, aren't, my question would have been, and this maybe other people's, well, if that's the case, like, can't you help your partner? My question was like, well, aren't you supposed to be reciprocal, and you're back and forth, and you're, you know, like sometimes they have bad days, and how do you deal with that? But I still think even that feels differently than someone who is sort of consistently pulling on you and not giving to you like a masculine, empowered masculine would. Yes, that empowered masculine is going to have bad days, I think, and especially, you know, you see that everyone does, but the degree of what they want you to do is very different. They don't want you to fix them or come up with problems for them and tell them what to do and solve all their issues. They may want love, I think, and you'll just want your presence and your light and your softness, but they aren't going to pull at you. And I think that's the difference in the feeling, I think.
You described it wonderfully. I wouldn't have said it better yet. That's exactly how a woman feels when a man is not connected to the divine masculine or his self responsibility. And we were talking about your father and even the men who came up for you from the past. They were both in addiction, and men who are in addiction, they don't have control over themselves. They cannot lead a relationship forward. They cannot lead themselves. So the difference you were referring to expand a little bit on it, it's just a difference in is the man able to lead himself and lead the relationship forward and lead us both towards safety and security, and does he want to make my life easier, or does he want to suck the life out of me, suck the feminine energy out of me? Because he has that the opposite of the little girl in us would be the little boy in man who hasn't grown up, who didn't learn how to be a man, and that boy is going to seek the feminine light, but he's not willing and he's not able to give us anything in return. He's not able to give us support and protection in return for our presence, for our loving presence. And we are often talking about that as the feminine devotion. And usually because the nature of feminine is very devotional. We in our nature it is like we just crave to be loved and to love someone. That's why we are talking about relationships so much. However, when we don't have that inner protector that you mentioned integrated, it feels like our feminine devotion is spilling all over the place, and we are directed it at men who are not able to receive it and build something from it. That's why it starts to feel exhausting, and it starts to feel like our feminine is being wasted, because it truly is. And again, it takes a moment where we become really honest with ourselves, and we just ask ourselves that question: is this how I want to live the rest of my life? What is the cost? What is the cost of living this way? So how do you think our work together was different from all the other methods or programs you mentioned that you were in before?
I mean, it was completely different. It was different in mostly it was not based in a checklist style of um thought, logical based.
Like, let's get you fixed.
Right. And I think that is the exact thing that and I think many women, I think way more than are even just having my friend circle and people,
Mm-hmm.
there is that desire that of while and it was fine. And I'm glad I did the way I did. It was the way it unfolded was perfectly good for me. But, leading up to that, it was the reason I chose things like that was because that's what I was comfortable with. It was very much, like, do these 5 things, or these are the things that you can do, and you're going to be fine, and you will fix everything for yourself, and it'll be great. And
Yeah. The inner
those-
child looking for a quick fix
sure.
instead of sustainable solution that actually require practice and require some effort on our part, and it doesn't have to feel like hard work. That's what I'm always saying. It doesn't have to feel like the work we do. It is. So do you think it is harder to do the inner work that we've done, or it is harder to be with the or keep the pattern in relationships, keep repeating the pattern that you repeated before?
Oh, it's 100% more satisfying and life giving. I mean, to say like, is it easier or hard? It's not. That like doesn't even give it the sort
Mm-hmm.
of amount of like, it's so hard to describe, but it's so much better, as pales like in comparison to that work of just finding things and logic, like thinking through to the next thing, and I'm going to do these things and it's going to work. I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to whatever. And then I'm also going to just continue to repeat the pattern because I haven't actually addressed any of the things that are going on. So this is totally, I mean, it's changed my life, 100% changed my life, and continues to. It's not like I'm now like, oh, I'm fine now, I'm totally fixed, quote unquote, and realizing like there was never anything to fix. So I think the problem with those kind of programs or things, problem being, the women like myself who are very good at task oriented things, but also that is the core of the issue, is thinking that there's something wrong with me to begin with. And so if I look at my life in a way of, I need to fix these parts of me, and once I'm fixed, on the other side of being fixed, whatever that means, all of these things are going to line up for me, and I'm going to be just wonderful, and everything's going to be fine, and I'm going to be perfect. Well, 1, there's nothing to fix, and 2, perfection is just not the desire. Like I think it's impossible for 1, and 2, it's just not, it's not, doesn't feel good
Yeah,
to have
exactly.
to think of myself as a being that needs to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And instead looking at doing the somatic work and feeling like, don't get me wrong, it's at first it is uncomfortable. It's a very new way of going in and sort of seeing what's going on, but building that and learning, like just like anything else, like the more we did it and the more I still every day like practice. I mean, and now like again, real life, like, if you want something that you can do and not just come out of it and be like, all right, well, I did that, but now I'm going back to my old ways of being. But now I know how to, and I I just want to feel better, and I know how to now. And so even when stuff comes up, still, if I catch myself, like there's an awareness there of when I'm in my head, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay. And where before it would be, that inner monologue of, God, I did it again, and why am I doing this? And stuffing down the feeling or doing whatever, which we pay really close attention. A lot of times, these are the kind of things I was saying to myself. But now, as soon as I recognize it, I sort of like can sort of put my hand on my heart and be like, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing, and that it's totally okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I love the part of me that at least is just so willing to try and help me, but I know actually what to do here, and it's nothing to do with anything that's going on outside. And I know how to come back to feeling better regardless of what's going on. It's just like such a blessing. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I really if anyone is thinking about doing it for something different, it really is life-changing. So, I mean, honestly, I can't thank you enough for what you've done.
Mhm. Yeah, you're so kind. And what you just shared is that feeling of coming home to our heart. And then when we are not anchored in our heart, we start longing for that feeling instead of longing for our coping mechanisms and different ways of addictions or fixing ourselves. We start craving home. We start craving being home and true to ourselves, and just, to me, it feels like just commuting with yourself, being with yourself and understanding yourself, and everything else starts feeling like a cage around our heart, where our heart cannot be comfortably and safely. Yes, Erin. So thank you. Thank you for sharing so beautifully. I believe you shared so many insights today. There is a lot of women can reflect on. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you and your
Thank
willingness to partner with me in this process of doing the work and restoring the health of your relationships and your relationship with yourself. So thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much.